morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Alexandra Joseph. I will be interviewing you based on the problem of evil and free choice.
Okay.
So my first question is, do you believe evil exists?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Personal evil, and then there's also, pardon me, there's also like natural evil, these sort of things. Like, you want me to elaborate, or is it a yes?
Yes.
Sufficient?
Yes.
So like I look at all sorts of evil. You know, I think there's a natural evil, like there's the natural evils like natural disasters and sickness and these sorts of things, and then you have your personal evil, of decision making and in the Christian perspective, sin, defects of character. I think just certain almost inherited flaws and these sort of things. I think there's a multitude of things, and I don't think the evil in as so far as I do think evil exists, but I don't think when one is perpetrating evil or making or the natural evils, that they are intrinsically. I don't think the decision maker is necessarily making a bad choice. I think they are. If you look at like the primary definition of sin, or at least the root from the Hebrew, it's missing the target. And I think so often when people are making evil decisions, I don't think anyone thinks. Maybe they do. Maybe they're psychopaths or whatever out there. But I don't think anyone thinks they don't recognize the damage that they're doing to themselves and others. And I think so often I think there's this perception of good, but then in the evaluation in the real time of my decision making, we can kind of begin to recognize that. So let's say you're driving your car,
Right.
and someone cuts you off and you cuss at them, or whatever, or you accelerate. It's like that could be, in that moment there was this sense of injustice, and then there was a perceived response to balance that injustice.
Right.
But then recognizing like, well, I got angry, and then maybe I became wrathful and all these sort of things. So I think in the moment, I don't think people perceive their evil because they think there's a perception that this is a good, but only in retrospect, and then maybe the evaluation of others,
Right.
does one begin to understand their evil, and that they begin to understand maybe in the light of their choices. And I think also, I think we in our current existence, I think there's this kind of almost tunnel vision in the moment that a lot of folks are unable to self-evaluate in the
Right.
real time. And that's,
Okay.
I think that could also be perceived as an evil, that there's this narrowed perspective that my way is the singular, the singular right
Okay.
way. And I think, and there's no other way to look at that. And I think that's something we kind of gained a lot in the 21st century. There's just this sort of very specific approach to how one views the world, and that one single lens is the true lens. And I think that's also sort of an evil too, that there's not.
Right.
That there are other perspectives, and I think we kind of, I think in another time in universities we kind of got that, maybe in your philosophy class for
Right.
the first time, it's like, oh, I've never thought about that, and it's
Yeah.
like perhaps there's a widening view, and I think that's something that we're losing now. I think a true university experience, your view should not come out as
It's
narrow as it came in, but
As
at least
open.
as open, and not necessarily agreeing to every perspective, but at least well aware that there are other perspectives. Does that make any sense?
Yes, and understanding where they come from and why they think the way they think and how they've come up to create these beliefs. More so not
Exactly.
shutting it down because it doesn't align with your beliefs.
Well, right, and not that I need to consent to that, but to know that others think this way, and then I
Yeah.
can appreciate the dignity of that person, and I think that's something that we are also
Right.
mindful of. Now, when it comes to natural evils like disease and earthquakes and all these other things, I think so often in the real time, especially like 2019, the Bahamas, it's like, well, that is a tragedy that the Bahamas got hit by a hurricane and that the hurricane stayed there. But we have to also look at the natural causes of hurricanes. Global warming, not global warming in a sense, but like actual heat, produced during summer weather and all this stuff, and to recognize what the hurricane is doing. It's trying to cool it down and all these sort of things,
Right.
and to bring about a kind of a balance to the tropical regions of our country, or of our world, not our country. So just a mindfulness, to there. I think so often we see these things as strictly evil, but there's actually a cause and an effect that are trying to bring a sort of a regular nature nature to, like with the fires in California. It's like, what is that? Well, that's years of not allowing little fires to kind of clean up, and now there are these massive fires with, and it's like, there's these effects of
These chain
purification.
reactions
So
of things.
yeah.
So, a lot of people will say darkness does not exist. It's the absence of light.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree that it's the same thing with evil? Like evil exists, but it isn't a thing. It's more so like the absence of humanity or the absence of God. Like the more God you lose, that's when evil comes in.
I wouldn't say it's an absence. I would say it's a rejection.
Okay.
Because I think so often I think when we say it's an absence, there's an implication that God is not omnipresent, and He's not, He's not willing, He's not here.
Right.
I think so often it is not a rejection, not an absence of, but a rejection of. So often we don't recognize the gift of our free will. It's like the Lord is always ever there, and generosity and virtue are always ever present. Well, we reject that, and I think so often we forget that it's the Lord is always the first mover. Our decision's the second is the response, and it's the second action. And I think so often people like, well, evil is the absence of good, but I think no, evil is the election for the failure to choose the good. Because the good is always ever there. You look at any experience, and there's always seems like there's this moment where good could be chosen over, like an evil moment. It's like there's always this moment where the good could have been chosen, or people could have elected, and yet they chose this.
Yeah.
They chose war, or they chose violence, and it's like, but there could have been an opportunity for conversation, dignity, dialogue, all these sorts of things, and yet at the crossroads, and this happens to each and every one of us. We choose to go the other. I mean, you can literally look at your interactions of walking past someone on the sidewalk. You could literally, you're at a crossroads here. I could literally say hi, and kind of give them a perspective of human dignity, perhaps they need, and perhaps they haven't had all day, or I could just walk past them as any other person. And it's like we're constantly choosing the good or choosing the not good in a particular circumstance. And that seems small and silly, but literally look at all these, maybe not to say that this is a cause or whatever, but look at all these, these kind of senseless shootings we've had in schools and all that. It's like, what if someone had treated that person with dignity somewhere at an earlier crossroads? Would they have seen their own self-value and the value of those around them? Had someone just said good morning to that person, what would that have looked like?
What would the chain reaction would have changed?
I think it's this constant choosing, ignoring the good, even though we have the capacity to choose it, that we find ourselves in often. So I think evil isn't an absence of good; it's an election for non-good, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay. My next question on the topic of good is: do you believe that God can do evil?
No, at least that's not as a Christian. I can't. I think God, where I think with this openness for evil is that God allows evil to happen, and I think that's not necessarily an election towards, but a freedom, a freedom for. I think so often, there's we study this theology, moral theology. There's the freedom for indifference, and so that's choosing that thing which, excuse me, leads a person to do something good, but as an avoidance of pain or whatever. And then there's the freedom for excellence, that which is choosing to make the world a better place, to make and so I think the Lord and His freedom for excellence, recognizing the dignity and the value of of human persons, allows evil to occur. But I don't think it's an absence of His love. I think if you look at the essential nature of God, what is His primary good motion? It's creation. That things are in a world where there could not be.
Right.
And I think that's not necessarily that the Lord is evil. I think how things have been manipulated outside of His creation, that's where the breakdown happens. I think you had a follow-up question. I'm going to cut you off.
Yes. So the idea that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, I was going to ask, the idea of Him not being able to do something, it sounds as if you're limiting His ability.
I think it's a non-ability, not being able to do something, because I think He can do everything, but I think He allows the human persons to do the choosing. Like I think so often, you look at salvation history, there are moments of divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
there are moments where the little people of Israel conquer or defeat the people of Egypt. There are moments where the death of Jesus Christ, fully God, fully man, conquers death. I mean, there are these
Right.
moments of divine intervention, and I don't think it's a matter that that these things that he does not choose, but that he also allows the human persons to do good. You look at over and over again where there are heinous and evil actions. There is the inspiration to do good. There's the inspiration to push against this reality. You know?
Okay.
So I think to say that like that the hand of God is like, does he come in this forceful, you know, splitting of the Red Sea? Not frequently, but does he put people in the right place to do the right choices to help others? Often, I think, again and again, there's always those people who are willingly sacrificial to encourage the value and the dignity of other persons around them. You know, so I think that's. I think he's not choosing. I think I think he's very subtle, and I think so often subtlety is seen as indifference, where subtlety is
Not trying.
calculated and being decisive and implication, and how this is how the action is taken.
Okay. And then the fall of the devil. So I know from my understanding that free will is important to us, and the reason why God doesn't just command everyone to just always pick the good choice or always do the good choices because he would compromise our free will.
Mm-hmm.
So he gives us the option. Why doesn't God, or has he ever thought of, if you will, to just get rid of the devil?
I think the devil is, I mean, of course, as a Christian, I believe it is a real person, but there's a recognition of this. You know, if we look at angels, which angel theology is complex and very nuanced, you know, it's believed that like an angel has perfect will and perfect intellect.
Right.
So there's not like humans where we don't know, we don't have that perfect intellect, we don't have that perfect will. There's always some sort of gap there, and yet Satan. If you look at like El Satan, which literally means the accuser, and if you even look at older ancient scriptures, like if you look at the book of Job or whatever, I don't know if everyone has the book of Job. Literally, the El Satan, the accuser, is literally sort of like the prosecuting attorney. You know, now the devil, as we see him in the light of kind of the Christian perspective, this diabolos, this sort of demon. That is, a unique perspective. This individual, or whatever individuals, however you want to phrase that, that is looking to deceive us. And I think so often, we look at God and the devil as equal parts.
Right.
Like these are equally matched individuals. And the fact of the matter is, as you said, if God is all good and all powerful, why doesn't he just make the devil go away? It's like, well, I think in so far as, I think there's this reality in play that if we took away, if you have free will but only have one choice, do you really have free will?
You don't.
It's like you only have the good. I mean, and it's like therein lies the challenge. And I think not that the evil one exists in so far to give us a choice, but a mindfulness that we can be that profoundly lost. And I think when it comes to salvation, I don't think that there are some that are predestined to heaven or predestined to hell. I think when one goes to hell, one has made the choices that led them there. They looked at the avenues of good and evil, and when the final, and I think it's not a matter of the final judgment that God says you go to hell,
Right.
but I think at the final judgment, your life choices, your projection you put yourself on. When the question comes, do you want to be with me, or do you want to go not with me, as the Lord would say? Or he'd probably say, like, do you want to go the other way? We'll hear the words of the evil one come out of our voices if we're choosing hell. It's, I will not serve. No, serve him. That's not my. I do not desire to serve the Lord, and I think that's something akin to equality with God.
Right.
Because if I am choosing not to be in a disposition of service or to be in a disposition of receptivity of the love of God and recognizing His good, then it'll easily come to my choice at the end of my days that I'm not willing to do this.
Right.
I'm not going to contractually. So I think you could get rid of the devil, sure, but there will always be that vacuum of incompatibility with God. So often, if you look at salvation history, look at these things, it's like there are those who have chosen to live according to the good news, to live according to the covenants, if you look before Christ, and then there are those not. And it's like, why? Well, there's this lack of recognition of service that I will not put myself at, that. So I think, and then you look at kind of, Saint Michael, we are saints and all that, or archangels, but Michael literally